Before we get started, I quickly want to say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hello, hi, howdy, welcome to a new video. My name is Lauren, and if you're new here, I'm a full-time ceramic artist. In this video, I'll be packing orders for my latest online drop, but I wanted to keep it interesting with a little voiceover Q&A. I asked on Instagram and YouTube community what y'all want to know, so today I'll be answering some commonly asked questions, mostly centered around working in clay, navigating burnout, and balancing studio time with part-time work and life. I actually also got asked a lot of questions about YouTube, which I think I'm going to cover in another video. So like the video, grab your favorite beverage, and subscribe to my channel if you're not. What are you looking forward to? And that is a great question. I'm looking forward to a lot. One thing, if you've been watching my vlogs lately, you know that I had an electrician come look at my garage to see if we could get a kiln set up in there. And it ended up being more expensive than I thought it was going to be, but I'm still working towards saving up to getting the electrical done and eventually getting a kiln in there. So I'm really looking forward to the day that happens. I'm still hoping maybe this year, but we will see. I'm also taking a few trips this year, which is really exciting. I'm going to Vancouver in March. I am going to Jamaica in May with my dad and my sister and Taylor. And that will be his first time in Jamaica, which is so wild because my family is from there and I just can't wait for him to experience it with us. And then I'll be going home to Toronto in the fall for a friend's wedding, but also to go see family. Right now, I'm also planning to do Market Collective, which is a market here in Calgary that I used to do a lot and haven't done in a few years, and so I'm going to do the spring one, I think, and I'm also applying for another market that I've never done, but I've heard great things about, Oddbird, which is in Edmonton. If I get accepted, then I'm going to be so excited for that too. Oh, I guess I have a lot of things I'm looking forward to. I'm also just so excited for it to be warm out and to go read in a park. I've been daydreaming about that so much lately. What are you most excited to make? I feel like I can only look so far forward into the future. So at present moment, I am most excited to get working on my spring collection. It's going to be very classically spring. I've already started mood boarding some ideas for shapes and forms and themes, and I think I'm gonna do a separate video on how I'm preparing to create the spring collection. Kind of like my Year of the Snake one, but maybe a little more in depth because I have a little bit more time to space it out. What is your least favorite thing about doing ceramics? I'm gonna answer this in a way that's directly related to the process of making ceramics rather than the process of running a small business, because I think those are kind of two different things. I've definitely been asked this before too, and I feel like my answer often changes, but right now I think my least favorite thing is to mix glazes. It depends on the day you catch me. Some days I'll say glazing is the worst part. Some days I'll say making glazes is the worst part. Right now I feel like making glazes is the worst just because, you know, you have to be so safety oriented. You have to wear a mask that squeezes your face and you're working with potentially harmful materials, so you have to be really careful. And while there is something really exciting about mixing a new glaze and trying to create a new color glaze, you don't really get the payoff of that till much later down the road when you actually apply it to a piece and you finally fire it and you get to see your results. And again, if you catch me on another day, I might say that mixing new glazes is actually really exciting and really fun. So that's just my answer right now. What's your most enjoyable thing about doing ceramics? I'm actually finding that the brainstorming and the planning for a collection has been one of my favorite things. I don't know if that's just a shift in the way I think about my business and my work, but that's what my favorite thing is right now. And then apart from that, I would also say throwing or trimming. If you are throwing multiple pieces at a time or you have a whole batch to trim, really locking in and getting into the zone while you're doing it feels really, really good. In the way that people describe pottery as being quite therapeutic, that's how I feel when I'm throwing, let's say, 20 mugs in a day. I'm just repeating steps, I've got the muscle memory going on, and it just feels like that's what I'm meant to be doing. Sometimes you just need to romanticize your job, and I think doing ceramics is kind of an easy one to romanticize, but when you're doing it day in and day out, it loses a bit of its magic from time to time, and so you kind of have to fake it until you make it in a way. You have to keep reminding yourself that, wow, doing this as my job is a real privilege, I'm so lucky, what I'm doing is important, and what I'm doing will bring joy to other people, and brings joy to yourself. Is it ever scary doing classes? The answer is yes, and I have been teaching workshops now for 2 years. I used to assist teach wheel throwing once upon a time as well, and I still get nervous every time I have to teach, even though I've been doing it for a while and I know what I'm doing and I know the steps. I think that's a bit more of a social anxiety thing than anything, but it's one of those things that the more you do it, the more experience you get doing it. I don't know if it necessarily gets easier, but you get more used to it. You have more practice, you maybe feel a little bit more comfortable, and that's how I feel every time I teach a class. Sometimes you need to put yourself out there and see how it goes. What do you do to help through periods of burnout? The biggest favor you can do for yourself when you're feeling burnt out or you feel burnout potentially weaseling its way into your life is to rest. Feels so wrong, but it's really the only thing that is going to help you is taking a break from what you're doing. And taking a break doesn't have to be long. It could just be taking a day off where you can, or saying no to more things, which I know is really hard. I also have a track record of saying yes to too many things at once and then feeling quite overwhelmed and having no one to blame but myself. But I feel that every year I learn something new about myself and the way that I am able to navigate burnout. And I think in my own experience, the thing that helps the most is taking a break or spending time completely away from the studio. You know, sometimes you have a deadline for something and you're feeling stressed about how you're going to meet that deadline. And the idea of resting feels very counterintuitive, but you simply cannot pour from an empty cup and you need to recharge your batteries sometimes. I think also avoiding getting to a point of burnout makes you much more resilient. Catching yourself before you are actually burning out can do wonders. Taking that rest time before you get to a place of despair is really important. And I think the longer I've been doing this, the more I'm able to recognize the signs and recognize when I'm needing a break. Another tactic I use to combat burnout is to do something creative that is totally different than ceramics. Maybe I'll paint, or I'll try knitting something, I will try sewing something, coloring, literally anything that's just unrelated to my job. And I feel like as creatives, we often need an outlet that's not providing us any financial support, something we do just for fun and for the joy of it. And once upon a time when I was working in my career, pottery was that thing. And I also think this is something that can help you gather inspiration as well. It gets your brain working in a way that's maybe a little bit different. And sometimes that's all you need. You need a break from what you're doing every day to do something else that still brings you joy. So the one I got asked the most in various forums was how to navigate ceramic and other work, / what is your other job, / how to balance studio and emails with another job, / lessons from taking on part-time work. So last year I ended up taking on a part-time job that was 3 days a week working with the Canadian Wildlife Service. I used to be a wildlife biologist, and so I was on a contract with them. And honestly, looking back, I probably could have not even shared that at all, because the contract ended up only being about 6 months, so it was only for half the year. But that's where we're at. I am back to full-time. It feels really good. It definitely feels different, but I also feel like I was able to get back into the groove of working for myself again pretty quickly. So when I was doing part-time work, I was steadily working Tuesdays to Thursdays at my computer, and I would use Mondays and Fridays as my studio days. I will say, as to be expected, my production did go down during the 6 months that I was working this other job, because also financially I wasn't reliant on ceramics anymore, which was actually quite a nice change of pace because I've been doing this full time since the end of 2019. And I think I expected that the days that I wasn't working my other job, I would just be so eager to get into the studio, and it was like that sometimes, but not always. There was a bit more pressure to be creative and be really productive on the days that I did have in the studio, because I knew those were the only days that I had to work on whatever I had in progress. While at the same time, I also felt the pull that, hey, this is not fully financially supporting me anymore. I have this other job, so I can be a little bit more selective with what I'm making. Maybe take this time to experiment a little bit more, try things that might not necessarily sell, but that I enjoy making myself personally. And in that sense, it was quite positive, because working for yourself, the amount of money you're making each month is not always consistent. It depends on how much you made, if you did a drop, Did people like what you made? All those things. Some days I felt really excited to have my Mondays and Fridays in the studio, and then some days it felt like a bit of a forced creative mission. I had to be productive and I had to be creative on those days. Generally working for myself full time, I tried to take weekends as weekends. For a really long time, I was always working weekends. I kind of really didn't take weekends for myself, but I also think structuring my self-employment like that just helps me create time for socializing, because a lot of my friends also have that kind of schedule. I would usually work on admin stuff for my business after work, and honestly, some nights after work I was still painting mugs, or I would bring work home with me. And then Mondays and Fridays, I just really had to dial it in. I also used my working days to kind of plan out how I was going to spend my Mondays and Fridays, to make sure that I had a plan when I was going into the studio. Because going in without a plan often led, I realized in the beginning, to not getting much done, feeling a little bit directionless, feeling a little bit overwhelmed with what I should be doing and what I should be prioritizing. I personally use Notion to organize all my thoughts, all my to-do lists, all my ceramic work I need to get done and things I need to remember. And I feel like being organized in that way, whether it's a digital planner or a paper planner, is really, really important. I also think it was a really big lesson going from full-time to part-time ceramics to remind myself that my output was not going to be the same as full-time, simply because I didn't have the same amount of hours in the day. I think early on I was trying to do the same amount of work, and that very quickly led to me realizing that I couldn't handle it and still have a social life and still be a good dog mom, a good friend, a good partner. And so I kind of shifted to prioritizing those things. And also remembering that you are doing so much work outside of your art practice, and you can't be expected to produce the same amount of work as somebody else you see on the internet who is doing that as their full-time job. To be totally honest, I still think that navigating that is a bit of a challenge for me. I don't think I've perfected the way that I would do that again. I'm still not the best with emails. I really have to make it a priority to do them before I do anything fun. Do the things that you really don't want to do first in the day, and then your reward is getting to do all the fun things that you do want to do. Okay, I feel like this has been a bit of a ramble, but I think my main points are just to try to be organized and try to plan ahead for when you do have time to fit in things related to your art practice or ceramics, and don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're not where you want to be yet, or you're not where somebody else is, because your journey is your own. And even for myself, looking back when I was working full-time in my biologist job, I would daydream about doing ceramics full-time, and it took me a while to get there. Move at your own pace, and if you are really passionate about it, you will create the time for it. Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to my little Q&A. If you have any questions of your own that you'd like me to answer, please leave them down below in the comments, and like this video if you enjoyed it. I have so many more questions that I got that I'm happy to answer in a future video. I also want to thank all of you who have joined me over on Patreon. Your support means the world, and I am so excited for this month's exclusive vlog coming up soon. Before we go, I just want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. We're still technically in the new year, and if you feel like now is the right time to create your own little section of the internet, Squarespace is the platform to get you there. Creating a beautiful, professional, working website can feel very overwhelming, but with Squarespace, it's super easy to get started and get going quickly. They really make the process so easy, and it's built for anyone to use at home with no coding required. You can integrate everything from buying your domain name to choosing your website template, all of which are super customizable, and you can even use their new design intelligence to create the website of your dreams, whether it be an online shop where you sell all your products, a blog, or somewhere that you share your services with others. With Squarespace, you'll be up and running in no time, and if you need any help, it is always there with their 24/7 support team. You can get a free 2-week trial with the link down below, or you can just go to squarespace.com and use the code From Tree to Sea for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.